Nenna had another daughter, but this time the baby looked nothing like her sisters. She was tiny, with strange features, and not what Nenna expected. Tears filled Nenna's eyes in horror and sadness as she stared at the baby. Once upon a time, in a quaint village named Anaku, nestled in the eastern part of Nigeria, and under King Oji's kind rule, lived Childe and Nenna, a couple whose beauty was the talk of the town. Everyone in Anaku would dream out loud about their future children, convinced that such stunning parents would only have the most breathtakingly beautiful kids. Just as everyone guessed, Childe and Nenna were blessed with 4 beautiful daughters: Apunau, Ugomma, Oyibo, and Bekee. These girls were so stunning that anyone who saw them had to stop and look again. Their beauty became the pride of the village. People praised Nenna's womb of beauty, and mothers often gifted the girls, hoping one day their sons would win their hearts. Years later, Nenna had another daughter, but this time the baby looked nothing like her sisters. She was tiny and had strange features. She was not what Nenna expected. Tears filled Nenna's eyes in horror and sadness. Her husband, unable to face the unexpected, fled, claiming he couldn't stay with what he wrongly called evil under his roof. Nenna's heart was shattered, torn between the pain of her husband's departure and the arrival of her strange child. Conflicted and overwhelmed, she kept the baby hidden, secretly wishing for her to quietly die. Yet, as the child resiliently clung to life, Nenna slowly accepted her reality. She named the child Emerem, meaning, "What did I do?" Emerem began growing up and grew up to be a very ugly girl. Her sisters treated her like she was a disease, and no one even cared if she was human. Her mother would never let her out of the house. She was always indoors to avoid the wagging mouth of the villagers. But it didn't stop them, as the villagers still talked. Emerem was turned into a slave in her own father's house because she was ugly and looked very tidy. She wasn't growing like every normal child. She did all the house chores in the house, yet no one appreciated her. At every slightest mistake, her mother would call her a cursed child. "What did I ever do to deserve a child like you? You do not look like your mother. You do not look like your father. You are an abomination." Sometimes, Emerem doubted if Nenna was truly her mother, as it seemed like she had only 4 children. But she endured all the ill treatments, hoping that she would die one day. She never thought there would ever be hope for her. Every day, Emerem sat alone and cried. She couldn't help but notice how different she looked from her sisters, and she couldn't understand what she had done to deserve such a harsh life. While her mother showered her sisters with lovely gifts, no one spared Emerem a glance, unless they needed her to do some chores. Emerem's mother made it clear she was not to leave the house. Yet, whenever the house was empty, Emerem found solace in the forest, beneath the comforting shade of a tree. There, surrounded by the quiet of the woods, she would sing, Singing breathed life into her, lifted her from her sadness, and for a brief time made her forget her troubles at home. Singing became a secret joy, and each evening, before anyone else came back, she would hurry home, holding onto the peace she found in her melodies. One day, while Emerem was lost in her songs under the tree, some girls returning with firewood spotted her. Dropping their loads in fear, they raced home, shouting, "Evil spirits! Evil spirits! Evil spirits!" Realizing the danger, Emerem knew she had to rush home to avoid being caught. By sundown, rumors had flown across the village about an evil spirit haunting the Achara forest, which had supposedly sought refuge in Nina's house. Unknown to Emerem, some of the children who saw her followed her home as she ran, tracing the source of their fear right to her doorstep. Immediately Nina heard this, she was so angry that she ran home, cursing at Emerem under her breath. "That evil child wants to embarrass me. Today, I will deal with her." When she got home, she angrily asked Emerem why she left the hut against her instructions. But as Emerem opened her mouth to speak, she began to hit her. "You want to disgrace me in this village, you cursed child." She lashed at her. When she left, Emerem cried her heart out, wishing death would take her. She couldn't bear the thought that she looked like nothing but an evil spirit in the eyes of the village children, and also couldn't understand why her mother hated her that much. She didn't create herself, she cried. When everything had died down, her mother came into her room and called her out in the middle of the night. "I need you to escort me somewhere," she said to her. "A friend of mine needs help." Emerem was surprised. Her mother had never calmly spoken to her before, so she felt her mother regretted her actions towards her and wanted to make amends. Hence, she followed her happily. They walked for a long time, crossing rivers and climbing mountains. But the journey was endless. At some point, Emerem got tired. "Mother, this place we are going to, is it still far?" "No," she responded. "We are almost there." Emerem was scared to provoke her mother by asking her more questions, but she wondered why her mother's friend had to live in that faraway forest. As they got to the middle of nowhere, her mother stopped and faced her. "I don't know how I got you, evil child. You have brought only pain to my heart, and I wish you died the day I had you. I've always prayed for you to die since I had you, but you refused to die. Rather, you have only brought me pain and shame. I won't allow you to embarrass me before the villagers. That's why I've brought you here." She turned, leaving Emerem in the forest. Emerem cried and cried, pleading with her mother, but her mother ignored her and went back home. Emerem was heartbroken. The forest howled with different sounds of wild animals, and she clutched her heart in fear. Her mother had just abandoned her to die in the forest. Out of fear, she ran after her mother, calling and pleading with her not to leave her. But she lost her to the dark forest. She began wandering around the forest, and when she got tired, Emerem sat under a tree and cried her heart out. She knew she was going to die, and she prayed the death came quickly. The forest was dark and terrifying, and she closed her eyes. Soon, sleep took over her. Emerem felt a gentle tap and opened her eyes to see an old woman in front of her. She quickly stood up, scared and shaking, almost wetting herself. She realized she was still in the forest and was puzzled to see the old woman there. Then, the old woman spoke in a voice that was calm and comforting. "My dear, don't be scared. I mean no harm. I was just getting some cooking water and saw you. Why are you out here?" Emerem thought back to what happened the night before and started to cry. The old woman gently comforted her and then invited her to come home with her, saying she couldn't stand the thought of leaving Emerem alone in the forest. Emerem carried the water alongside the old woman as they headed to her home. They arrived at a simple, somewhat run-down hut, hidden deep in the forest. Despite its appearance, the place was tidy, clearly someone's home. Emerem couldn't help but feel it was a bit strange. Who would choose to live all alone out here, she wondered. She was even more surprised when the old woman mentioned she had been living there for more than 20 years. The old woman cooked some boiled yam, explaining to Emerem that she found the seeds in the forest and planted them near her hut. She also had plenty of fruit and veggies, suggesting a life of simple self-sufficiency surrounded by nature. After their meal, Emerem opened up about her life, and the old woman listened with deep sympathy. "Your mother has been very cruel," she said, clearly upset. "I would have been grateful to have a child, no matter what she looked like, even like you. But don't worry, I will help you." The old woman began to share her own story with Emerem, making the moment even more special. She told her about a long time ago when she got married, full of hopes and dreams. However, life had other plans. She couldn't have children, which brought her much sadness. Seeing this, her husband decided to marry another woman in hopes of having a child. Tragically, when the new wife had a baby, the baby didn't survive. Immediately, fingers pointed at her, accusing her of causing the baby's death out of jealousy. The situation worsened when her co-wife also passed away from a mysterious illness. And again, the blame fell squarely on her shoulders. Her husband, swayed by the villagers' gossip, couldn't stand by her, and she was unjustly labeled a witch and banished to what they call the evil forest. "I've lived here since that day," she told Emerem, her voice a mix of sorrow and strength. "For 20 years, I've been all alone, with not a single soul passing by. But now, I think the gods saved me just for you. You are not just any child, you are a star. And I see its glow right on your forehead." Emerem laughed. "A star? Me? Here in this thick so-called evil forest?" It all seemed too strange and unbelievable. But what she didn't realize was that Oyego, the old woman, was no ordinary person. She had incredible powers hidden beneath her humble appearance and the simple life she led in the forest. Emerem was about to discover just how extraordinary her new friend was. The connection between her and Emerem grew stronger as they both found solace in their shared experiences of unjust treatment and exile. In the village, Nnenna felt a weight lift off her shoulders. A secret she had harbored for years now seemingly resolved. Whenever someone inquired about Emerem, Nnenna simply said she had died. She couldn't stand the thought of being labeled an evil woman just because she had a child who looked strange. This lie was her escape from judgment and the whispers of the villagers, providing her with a false sense of relief from the guilt and complexity of her relationship with Emerem. Life continued to be favorable for Nnenna's beautiful daughters, who had blossomed into stunning young women. Their beauty was renowned throughout the kingdom, drawing suitors from far and near to their doorstep, each one hoping to win the hearts of one of these celebrated sisters. The fame of their attractiveness had spread so widely that their home became a gathering place for those seeking to marry, not just for love, but for the allure that came with the promise of such remarkable beauty. Meanwhile, in the village of Anako, King Oji was facing his golden years with a heavy heart, caught in a web of uncertainty. As the tradition dictated, he was to pass on the crown to one of his sons before he departed from this world. However, the palace was shrouded in confusion, as the decision of who should inherit the kingship was not clear-cut. This predicament left the entire royal household, and indeed the village at large, in a state of anxious anticipation, wondering how the king would resolve this crucial dilemma. King Oji's dilemma revolved around his two sons, Chike and Dike, who were twins. Their entrance into the world was marked by a tale as unique as they were. The queen went into labor under the cover of the night, and in the urgency of the moment, her maidservants dashed out to summon the midwife. However, by the time the midwife arrived at the queen's chamber, the twins had already been born. In the hustle to clean and care for the queen and her newborns, no one thought to note which of the twins had been born first. This oversight led to a pressing and unprecedented question within the palace walls: which of the twins was destined to ascend the throne? The lack of clarity on this critical detail posed a significant challenge, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the future leadership of Anako. As King Oji grew older, his concerns deepened. His sons Chike and Dike shared a bond deeper than mere brotherhood. They were the best of friends, yet it was clear that their hearts lay in different places. Chike harbored a deep fascination with the throne, often lost in daydreams of ruling Anako. He was drawn to the prestige and respect that came with being king. Dike, on the other hand, showed little interest in royal ambitions. His nature was gentle and lovable, making him beloved among the people. His passion was his ranch, where he poured his energy and love, content with the life he built away from the throne's allure. King Oji noticed Chike's keen interest in leadership and Dike's indifference. Despite understanding Chike's desires, The king resolved to leave the decision to the gods. He believed in allowing a higher power to guide the future of Anako. If the gods chose Chike, then he would accept that destiny with open arms, trusting that the welfare of his kingdoms would be in the hands of fate. King Oji, seeking wisdom, gathered with the village elders to call upon Ezemo, revered as the eyes of the gods, for guidance. Upon arrival, Ezemo made himself comfortable on a spread-out mat, entering a state of deep communion with the deities of the land. After a solemn period of invocation, he shared the divine directive. The princes were to undertake a quest in 4 market days, venturing into the mysterious Ajadu forest. Their mission was to find a special staff hidden deep within the earth of the forest. The true heir to the throne would be revealed by a guiding light within the forest, leading him to the staff, a sign of the gods' favor and protection. The king felt a weight lift from his shoulders with the assurance of his son's safe return. By the chief priest. Following the seer's instructions, the princes were to undergo a purification ritual without delay, preparing their spirits and bodies for the pivotal journey ahead. This process was not just about physical readiness, but symbolized their readiness to face whatever challenges lay in the path dictated by the gods, embarking on a journey that would not only test their courage, but also define the future of Anako. In the serene heart of the forest, where Uyego and Emerem had found solace together, Uyego revealed a significant truth to Emerem. Uyego wasn't just any inhabitant of the forest. She was a seer, blessed with profound insight and power. She unveiled the dark tale of Emerem's birth. Something very grave happened while your mother was carrying you, Uyego began. One day, she visited the market with a craving for a particular type of meat. However, the price was far beyond what she was willing to pay. Despite the cost, her desire was overpowering. Amidst the hustle and crowd around the butcher's store, she seized the opportunity to take the meat without payment. Unnoticed, she left, leaving behind an innocent woman to bear the blame and the consequences of her actions. This woman, wrongly accused and publicly humiliated, as the angry mob stripped her naked and beat her up, cried out in her anguish and innocence, causing her accusers and the unseen thief to bear a lifetime of shame. Since your mother was pregnant with you, the curse took hold on you instead. Tears streamed down Emerem's cheeks as she absorbed the tale of her mother's deed, understanding for the first time the source of her pain and difference. Uyego comforted her, promising liberation from the curse. They would undertake a 7-day ritual of purification and appeal to the spirits for mercy. During this time, Emerem was to fast from food and water, preparing her spirit and body for the final step of the ritual. On the 7th day, she would immerse herself in the sacred waters of the Ajadu River, washing away the curse and emerging renewed, ready to embrace her true essence, free from the shadows of the curse. as the quest for the future king of Anaku began. Princes Chike and Dike ventured into the dense Ajadu forest, their paths diverging as soon as they sought the divine staff. Guided by Ezemo's prophecy, they knew they just had 7 days to complete their task. Chike, driven by his ambition, searched tirelessly, yet the guiding light eluded him. Dike too found no sign of the light for days, growing weary with the search. On the 3rd day, Chike stumbled upon an old woman in distress, her cries piercing the forest's silence. Focused solely on his quest for kingship, he chose to ignore her plea for help, convinced that nothing should divert his attention from his goal. Meanwhile, Dike, seeking a moment's rest, had the same cries of panic and pain. Despite his initial fear and confusion, his compassionate heart couldn't ignore the suffering voice. Driven by the desire to aid, he followed the sounds, only to find the old woman suddenly disappear as he approached her. In her place, a bright light appeared, beckoning him forward. He followed the light, which led him through the dense forest to a vast cave. Inside, the light focused on a glowing spot on the cave floor. Filled with determination, Dike dug at the spot and unearthed the staff, its glow a beacon of his success. The journey back home was filled with a sense of accomplishment and relief. Unlike his brother, Dike had allowed his kindness to guide him and had led him to the very goal they both sought. Upon crossing 2 rivers on his journey back, Dike encountered Chike and excitedly shared his discovery. Chike's heart sank with the news, and bitterness swiftly took root in his heart. He couldn't understand why Dike, who already seemed to have everything, love from the queen, adoration from the townspeople, and wealth from his successful ranch, should also be the one to find the staff. This was the one thing Chike had longed for himself. Hiding his envy, Chike congratulated Dike and asked for a brief pause, claiming he needed a moment alone to ease himself. Trusting and unsuspecting, Dike waited under a tree. Seizing this moment, Chike attacked Dike from behind with a heavy stick, striking him until he fell motionless. Believing Dike to be dead, Chike grabbed the staff and hurried back to the village. His return sparked widespread celebration among the villagers, who interpreted his success as divine selection. The air was filled with the rhythm of drums and the joy of dancers, as the village had been filled with anticipation since the princes had departed. Drained and hungry from his days in the forest, Chike was welcomed with a lavish meal prepared by his mother. As he rested from the ordeal, the villagers' joy was tinged with concern for Dike, whose fate remained unknown to them. The celebration for Chike's return masked a dark deed, leaving the true test of character and destiny unresolved. Emerem had fulfilled the 7-day ritual and had taken her bath in the Ajadu River. True to the words of Uyego, she came out of the water with a very beautiful skin, her deformity totally healed, and her body glowing like the sun itself. She was so happy, as she couldn't believe she would no longer live with the stigma. Uyego asked her to return back home so she could live her dreams, but she said no, choosing to stay back with her instead. She couldn't leave Uyego, as she was the kindest woman she ever met. Besides, Uyego was old and needed some help around. One evening, while returning from the river, Emerem was startled by the sound of someone in pain. Overcoming her fear, she went close and discovered a man lying in the forest, weakened and bleeding. Rushing back, she called Uyego, and together they brought the man to their hut. Uyego, with her knowledge of healing, took care of his wounds and began treating him with her herbal remedies. Meanwhile, the palace was engulfed in worry. Over a week had passed without any sign of Prince Dike, prompting the king to dispatch a search team into the forest, with orders to return with the prince alive or dead. But even after an exhaustive search, extending beyond 14 days, there was no trace of him. The king, heartbroken, assumed the worst, that his beloved son had fallen prey to wild beasts, and declared a 7-day mourning period for Dike, a testament to the prince's widespread adoration. Following the mourning, plans were made to continue with the traditional rituals leading up to the coronation, including a 14-day period of fortification for the prince, culminating in the official ceremony. The kingdom prepared to move forward, even as Dike's fate remained unknown to them. His true situation, hidden within the depths of the forest under Uyego and Emerem's care. In the forest, Prince Dike was recovering fast. He could now talk and eat properly. He had shared his sad story with his new friends, and they felt so sorry for him. It was unfortunate that the three of them had treaded the path of betrayal, and it was the one thing that brought them together. You will get better soon, and you will go back to your village in good health. The gods have preserved you for the throne, Uyego said to him. Dike couldn't still believe his own brother did that to him, and all for the throne. But he was glad the gods saved him. He enjoyed the company of Emerem and the old woman. Uyego was very nice and caring, and Emerem was a beauty with an angelic voice. Every evening, she would sit under the tree and sing the prince beautiful songs, which he enjoyed so much. With time, they grew closer, and each day the prince found more reasons to love her. She was so beautiful. The way she took care of him and the beautiful songs she sang him could not just leave his mind. Uyego had caught him severally as he stared at her while she cooked, and it got her so excited. He knew within him that he had just found a wife, the woman of his dreams. On the day of the coronation, the whole village gathered to celebrate the crowning of the new king. Kings and princes from different kingdoms were invited. Noblemen of calibers were invited. Prince Chike felt so proud. He had dreamt about this day his whole life, and in a few hours he would be pronounced king. That day, he dressed in his royal apparel and looked so handsome. When he stepped out, the villagers couldn't argue that the gods had made the right choice, as Prince Chike looked so glorious in his royal attire. As the traditional priest and the Onowu, the chief kingmaker, conducted the final rituals of the coronation, Chike was declared king. Yet, as he attempted to sit on the throne, an unseen force repelled him. He tried severally to sit on the throne, but each time he tried it, it burned him. It was as if the seat of power rejected him. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their excitement turning to confusion and fear as they couldn't understand what was happening. Just then, Ezenmo, the revered seer, entered. All eyes turned to him, desperate for an explanation of the unsettling spectacle. With a voice that commanded attention, Ezenmo revealed the truth. Prince Chike is not the rightful king of this land. He has not earned the staff, and he knows what happened to his brother, Dike. Under Ezenmo's powerful enchantment, Chike found himself compelled to speak the truth. He fell to his knees, his voice breaking as he confessed to attacking Dike in the forest, taking the staff by force and leaving his brother dead. The king, along with everyone present, was shocked. "Your own twin brother," the king repeated, unable to grasp the magnitude of Chike's betrayal. The villagers expressed their disdain, openly rejecting the heinous acts Chike had committed. Then, amidst the turmoil, Ezenmo announced a turn of fortune. With all eyes on him, he prepared to share a revelation that would reshape the destiny of Anaku. Prince Dike is alive and in the heart of the forest, around the Ajadu River. He was found by two kind people and has fully regained himself. Let the king send out men to go into the forest and bring back the prince. And as for Chike, the king should decide his punishment. With that, he turned and left. Without delay, the king sent out a search party immediately, and they all hurried down to the forest to bring back the prince. Uyego was happy when she saw the king's men. She knew they had come for the prince, and was also happy that Emerem finally found fulfillment. She had watched her bond with the prince, and the love between them was undeniable. Finally, she could die a fulfilled woman, as God has used her to save a kingdom that rejected her 20 years ago. They thanked Uyego and Emerem and took the prince. Tears rolled down Emerem's eyes. She was so sad the prince was leaving, as they both had bonded so well, and she was going to miss him dearly. The prince was a very kind and soft man, and the way he conversed with her, she was so in love with him. She never thought she would ever see him again. But the prince had no plans to leave them. He ordered the men to bring them out of the forest, as they both saved his life. But Uyego insisted she would stay back. That place was home to her, and she never would leave her home. Unknown to them, Uyego was no human but a spirit. She was the guardian of the forest and had existed for over 1,000 years. Her mission was to rescue good people and not allow any harm come near them. but she never reveals her identity to humans so that they wouldn't be scared of her. She could be an old woman, and she could also be a young woman whenever she wanted. All the stories about the villagers banishing her were all made up, and her hut could only be visible whenever she wanted it to be. That was why the first search party couldn't see the hut. She held DK and Emerem's hand and blessed them. Then she bade them goodbye. As they set off, Emerem turned to bid her goodbye once more, as she wasn't happy to leave her behind. But to her utter amazement, everything had vanished. Fear gripped them, as they now knew that they had been with a god and not a man. The villagers went crazy at the sight of Prince DK. Everyone was so happy to see him. His mother shed tears of joy. He was the man after the heart of the people. Emerem was also there to celebrate the prince in person, and a date was fixed immediately for his coronation. It was going to be a double celebration, as he would also be getting married the same day to the love of his life, Emerem. The prince narrated the story of how he found Emerem in the forest and how she was abandoned by her mother, Nnenna. Nnenna was shocked. She couldn't believe it was Emerem standing with the prince. She had changed and looked so beautiful. She cried her heart out when she learned she was the cause of Emerem's misery. Yet, she treated her with so much wickedness. Her sisters, who were all still unmarried, as we were waiting for kings and rich men to come ask for their hand in marriage, were so sorry, as they had all treated Emerem badly. They came closer as they knelt and asked their sister for forgiveness. Emerem had a good heart, and she knew she deserved to be happy and free. The gods had turned her pains into joy. Therefore, she forgave her sisters and her mother. She knew they must have learned their lessons. The villagers stood in shock as the prince openly made his intentions to marry Emerem known. He told them that she was the best thing that had happened to him in his journey. He looked at her with so much love in his eyes, and Emerem loved him too. On a grand occasion, Prince DK was crowned king alongside his queen Emerem. They got married and lived happily ever after. The king disowned Chike and sent him out of the palace. He was to live like an ordinary man in the village as punishment for what he had done. Thank you so much for taking out your time to watch this beautiful story, and I hope you enjoyed the story. I would like you to share your lessons in the comment sections, and also don't forget to tell us where you are watching from. If you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, please don't skip this video without subscribing, and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. I'm so grateful and I appreciate your love and your support. But right now, I have to go, and see you in our next story. Bye!